Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. You know, as the Patriots are entering kind of an unprecedented time in Robert Kraft's tenure, in Bill Belichick's tenure, and facing some hard decisions, I tried to figure out who would best speak to who Bill has been, what direction the team might take, somebody who's expert, who's gone through it. And I thought about it, I was like, who? Not a former player, not another GM who worked with Bill. I came up on Bill Polian. So Bill Polian, you might know the name, just to give a little history. He is a Hall of Fame executive. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015. He was the architect of the Buffalo Bills in the early 90s, 86 to 93. He was in charge of them. Then he went to the Carolina Panthers as an expansion team. And I believe within 2 or 3 seasons, might have been 2 seasons, he had him in the NFC Championship game. Then he, of course, went to the Colts in the late 90s, and he was with them until 2011. So during that great stretch, Bill Polian was one of the great villains to Patriots fans. But he built 3 different teams from 3 different standpoints, and he was fired in all 3 different positions. He's 80 years old. He's a contemporary of Bill Belichick's. He's a fellow competitor of Bill Belichick's. And that's why I thought, in addition to the fact that he's incredibly smart and articulate, why I thought it'd be interesting to have him in, as the Patriots are, in my mind, if we're being realistic, heading towards probably some seismic change within the organization at the end of the season. So we'll bring in Bill. Here he is, Bill Polian. Bill, it's great to have you here. You know, it was great because you were kind of like a public enemy NFL number one, NFL public enemy number one. You know how we are here in Massachusetts and Boston. You're from New York. Who do we hate? We hate Polian.
Right. Absolutely. Plus, I spent 20 summers on the Cape. So, but strangely enough, when people got to know me in Falmouth, where we lived, they thought I was a little better than public enemy number one. Still not a fan favorite, but not public enemy number one.
Exactly. And that's how I felt too. And the reason was you were such a fantastic competitor. And you built such a fantastic team with the Indianapolis Colts, as you did with the Buffalo Bills, as you did with the Panthers. The Patriots are confronting an interesting situation here. But I first wanted to kind of delve into your experience. You got fired in Buffalo after 3 straight Super Bowl appearances, and you were only 50 years old. So when I call you and talk about a time of crisis here with the New England Patriots, you went through an amazing number of difficult ends of the road.
Yeah, that's right. Same in Indianapolis. After 14 years and 150 wins, it came to an end. So yeah, I've been through it. It's not fun, but it happens.
With the Patriots, what do you see unfolding here now with the franchise?
Well, let's look back historically. Number one, I think it needs to be put in historical context, and I'll tell you why. I was driving on the Cape last summer, not giving much thought at all to what was happening in professional football. As you know, I'm a crazy baseball fan, so I was following baseball, and all of a sudden, all this talk comes about, well, this is going to be Bill's last year, and I was shocked. I said, where does this come from? The guy's within hailing distance of being the winningest coach of all time. What's going on here? And then I thought about it, and I began to think historically. There, in my opinion, there have been 4 great dynasties in professional sports in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. In hockey, the 50s and 60s Montreal Canadiens, largely driven by a rule which gave them the right to every French Canadian prospect in Quebec. Mm-hmm. The Yankees in the 50s and early 60s, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, etc., led to 10 pennants in World Series by Casey Stengel, and then later Ralph Houck. Mm-hmm. That dynasty lasted about 15 years. The Celtics, really 2 iterations of that. Bob Cousy then Bill Russell, and of course, the architect himself, Red. Greatest dynasty in all of professional basketball and all of basketball, period, at any level. And then the Patriots. And I could make an argument that the Patriots were the greatest dynasty of all because they lasted the longest, and they won the most championships. I didn't double check on how many championships the Canadians won, but if they exceeded the Patriots by a little bit, it still doesn't change a thing. So, bottom line, Boston fans have been party to two of the four greatest dynasties in sports history. So you're a little bit spoiled. Start there. And the bar is unrealistically high because a dynasty has to end at some point. And when you think about how long this has gone on, essentially 3 generations of players, 2 generations of coaches. Over time, in any dynasty, there's a brain drain. Think about the guys that have left the personnel department to become general managers. Dave Ziegler, the guy in Houston.
Pioli, Dimitrov.
Pioli, Dimitrov, Johnny Robinson.
Jason Light, yeah.
Jason Light, yes. So that erosion takes its toll. If there's a Hall of Fame for offensive line coaches, and I wish there was, Howard Mudd, who was ours in Indianapolis, and Dante would be first ballot unanimous choices. There have been no 2 greater offensive line coaches in the modern history of the sport. Maybe all throughout the history of the sport. So, and that's the most important guy on your coaching staff, far more important than the coordinators, and especially in Bill's system where he knows both sides of the ball. The offensive line coach has the most guys to coach and the most critical part because nothing happens if they don't function well. So all of that erosion, which is normal, has been dealt with and overcome over time. Sooner or later, as we all know, Father Time's undefeated. So sooner or later, that erosion will take its toll. And all of that is coming home to roost right now. The fact that it's lasted this long is absolutely incredible. So that's the historical perspective. I'll stop there. And
I appreciate it because it is absolutely worth reminding what we have borne witness to. I mean, I've said it many times. I could have been born in Arizona and covered the Cardinals, and by now I'd be selling insurance or doing whatever else because I never would have had the same career that I've been fortunate enough to have. I've covered, Bill, the equivalent of Lombardi's Packers and Walsh's 49ers without having to leave my home state. And I watched Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and Randy Moss and Darrelle Revis and Rob Gronkowski and Ty Law and Richard Seymour. And I don't know if there's been a luckier reporter anywhere ever than I have to be able to watch this from the time Bill came in. But as you experienced all that stuff and the gratitude that we feel and, you know, the awe that we have, there does come a time where, okay, it's post Brady 2020. You certainly have a reset year. 2021, it looks pretty good. And then in 2022, after Josh McDaniels leaves, you have a quarterback on a rookie contract. You've got some free agents who aren't working out. You haven't drafted well. And then you make some coaching staff decisions that don't work out at all. And now you're in the midst of a year that you expected to be a little bit better than you were. You expected to be a competitive team. And it's really swirling the drain. And again, your team in 2011 with Peyton's injury, there's, you know, you didn't anticipate that. The team goes 2-14. And I guess you've experienced it, I guess. So while there's gratitude from the media and the fan base and ownership, there's a point at which you say, okay, it's not working anymore. And the rubber meets the road. And how much do we owe Bill and how much do we owe the fan base and our organization?
Well, I think you can, everything you said is true. And I've said on my Sirius radio show and to other people that have asked on many occasions, listen carefully to Bill, particularly after losses. Listen carefully. Don't worry about how he says it or to whom he says it. Just listen to what he has to say. And I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but after a recent loss, he was asked, what are you going to do? He said, we're going to start over. That resonated with me. Because there comes a time when you recognize that patches don't work. Maybe you've had a series of tough breaks injury-wise. Obviously, everybody makes mistakes. As great as Bill has been over time, he's not infallible. He's going to make some mistakes. So did Lombardi. So did Bill Walsh. So, and he's certainly in that company. When he said we're going to start over, I thought to myself, okay, I hear what he's saying. I know what he means. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's look at everything we've done. Let's look at it with a fresh lens. The people that are here, let's not ruminate on mistakes. We know those. Let's deal with who's here on the field, in the office, on the coaching staff, and do what we need to do to get this as good as we can get it. So I think what we intended to do in Indianapolis, which was a reset, is actually beginning. When Bill said, we're going to start over, I think what he meant was, this is a reset. We're going to get this right. So the only question then for Mr. Kraft is Bill the right guy to do that? There are two questions. The first question is does Bill want to do it? Because it requires a heck of a lot of work. A heck of a lot of work. There are some redeeming pieces here, including the quarterback, by the way. But I think you have to play differently than the fans are used to, and certainly the team is used to. And you saw a little bit of that in I guess it was 21 when they went to the running game and Stevenson had the big year. And Bill's able to do that because he's got a sound grasp of everything football-wise, whether it's teams, offense, defense. He's one of the rare head coaches who covers every base. So he can do that. So the question number one is, does he want to? Nobody knows. That's his decision and his own. And rightly so. Secondly, does Mr. Kraft, want to go along with that? It's interesting. When you think of the dynasties, there are many, many things in common. But the most important ones are iconic, irreplaceable coaches or managers, iconic Hall of Fame players. It's not an accident. The two go hand in hand. In the case of the non-Boston dynasties, great general managers. In the case of the Boston dynasties, coach / general manager, both. And then finally, supportive, non-meddling owners. Walter Brown let red be red. Mr. Kraft has let Bill be Bill. They're supportive. They do what it takes to win. They don't pinch pennies, and they don't get in the way. And so it's interesting that all those dynasties have those similar components, and other people are trying to look to win, and they muddle around and go here and go there. The answer's right in front of you if you refer to the history books. In any event, Mr. Kraft is part of that discussion. So Bill and Mr. Kraft, I presume, will have a discussion. I did with my owner in every place I ever worked, and they'll talk about the road ahead. And who knows what will come of that. But first and foremost, this reset, which has to take place and is, in my view, is taking place. Bill's going to want to do that. Has to want to do that. And if he doesn't, God bless him. We'll see you in Canton in a couple of years. And if he does, and Mr. Kraft wants it to continue, then go ahead. I'm not betting against Bill Belichick. Let me add this other thing.
Sure.
When you're competing, when you got the competitor's hat on, you're right. I'm a fierce competitor and a terrible loser. And so you don't look at things from a completely unbiased analytical point of view. When I began broadcasting for ESPN and began being the color man on ESPN radio game broadcasts of the NFL, I had occasion to have, maybe 4 or 5 Pats games a year.
Yep.
And so I began looking at the film. I began studying instead of trying to find ways to beat them, I began studying what they do to win. I might have been better off if I'd done the latter earlier. but bottom line is, there's been no coach that I've ever competed against or watched who was better at doing all the little things that it takes to win, both in preparation and in game, than Bill Belichick. He won many, many games because of his preparation and his game management. Secondly, as much as I love Peyton Manning, I got to say, there's been no quarterback in the history of our game, or at least that I've followed, as good at capitalizing on opponents' mistakes than Tom Brady. He has the ultimate killer instinct. And the best example is the Super Bowl against Atlanta. He throws an interception. Atlanta's going to get the ball back, right? Except the Atlanta safety drops the ball. Case closed. I said to the people I was watching the game with, this game's over. Brady's taking him down. You give him a gift, he doesn't cash it in at the local gas station. He's off to Neiman Marcus. He's taking your life savings. That's just what he was. And you can't replicate that. God only makes a few people like that.
Yeah. And to create a Bill and a Tom, and to have the serendipity of that union, and to have Robert Kraft in 1999 say, all right, you know what? Everybody can't stand this guy. He looks like an unmade bed. He's got the personality of a rock, but I really like him, and I'm going to put him in charge of my organization, and I'm going to back off and let him do his thing. To have that happen, and then to see what happened, and to win on the margins as they did in so many different ways, is it almost impossible, as we look at 2023 heading into 2024, a possible top 5 pick, $100 million in cap space? You say, Bill, we did it. We did it. It's over though. We're not going to be like we were. We're not winning on the margins because we can't even coach on the margins because the players aren't good enough right now. We have to even get fundamentals and tackling right. We can't get into situational football because we can't run a friggin' trap. And that's kind of, again, nobody is more studious in preparation than you are, but sometimes I speak to folks who aren't here and they're like, why are people pissed at Bill? What's the problem? And you look at games like Las Vegas last year and people were throwing it backwards over their head at the end of the game, where you look at a 34-0 loss to New Orleans. It's really, I guess what I'm saying, Bill, is it's really bad, especially if you're experiencing it on the day-to-day, to the point of, I wonder if Robert Kraft looks at this and says, we did give you the latitude to fix it, and it's getting worse. So I guess it's like, there feels like an inevitability to things right now, Bill.
I'm not sure I agree with that, Tom.
Okay.
And here's why. First of all, when you're there day to day, it feels a lot worse than it really is. Joe Paterno, who was a great mentor of mine, used to say, you're never as good as you look when you win, and never as bad as you look when you lose. So, and that's very, very true. So when you step away, which you have to do as an executive, Mr. Kraft has to do that. Bill has to do that. Every executive has to do that. Step away, try to look at it objectively and say, okay, where are we? The reset has begun. Bill said that. So where are we along that timeline with respect to coaches, players, staff, etc. That's question one. And then question two is, how long is this going to take to get to the point where we can now become truly competitive? Because it's fair to say that they're not truly competitive now. I'm sure Bill doesn't want to hear that, but that's when you step away, you say, well, that's a fact. That's why all of these things are happening. The players can't execute what the coaches want them to do, and things go wrong during games that never went wrong before. That's a function simply of the quality of personnel and the fact that the superstar, be it Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Bob Cousy, Bill Russell, Tom, covers up for a magnitude of sins that no one else notices, except when he's gone. That is also a fact. It's not a crutch; it's a fact.
Sure.
So the question is, how do you conduct this reset going forward? And as I said earlier, I think there's two people that are party to that discussion. The first one is, does Bill want to do it? And I wouldn't blame him if he didn't want to. And secondly, where is Mr. Kraft on that issue? So no one has the answer to that. But I don't think there's any inevitability to it either, because I know both men, and I know how analytically driven I don't mean analytics numbers. I mean analysis driven that they are, and fact driven that they are. That I don't think either one thinks it's inevitable. The question is, what's the best path forward?
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Massachusetts. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
Why do you think Mac Jones is not as trash as we're starting to think? I'm trying to come up with a diplomatic way of putting it. Why don't you think Mac Jones is trash like us?
As non-competitive as you think.
Better. Thank you.
Because I've seen him play at a high level in the context of a certain way to conduct the offense. He's not Tom. We're never going to see another Tom or Peyton in our lifetime.
Right.
Patrick is a different cat. You're never going to see another one like him. They're unicorns. They come along once. I was fortunate. I got a gold jacket because I was fortunate enough to have Jim Kelly and Peyton Manning, right? I mean, let's face facts. Those guys are unique.
I mean, people are watching my podcast because I happen to be lucky enough to cover the Patriots and grow up in Massachusetts. I mean, I've had a career because I was lucky. I mean,
yeah. So they come along once in a lifetime. So Mac is never going to be that. But I think given appropriate protection, an appropriate way to play the game, to play within the context of what he can do, and given the weapons that are useful to play the way he can play, and I think that's what Bill means when he says start over. I think he's capable of being a winning quarterback in the league.
I agree with that if you're asking me if you have a stable team around him, could he have been a backup to Peyton Manning and gotten your team to the playoffs? Absolutely. Could he have been a suitable backup to Tom and gotten the team to been a Don Strock or Earl Morrall, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But in a team where the windows are small, the protection is light, the personnel isn't great, his lack of mobility and his extreme lack of velocity they expose him even more, Bill, I think. So on a rebuilding team, he is the opposite of a good fit. On a good team, he's a really good fit. But I'd rather have somebody like a friggin' Sam Howell last week to move around, be strong-armed. If my team's going to stink, at least make it watchable. And Mac makes it hard to make it watchable. And if the rebuild is a long time, and thank you for letting me go on a soliloquy since you're the expert and I'm not, and I'm just babbling here, but if you're going to be in this kind of a rebuild, you have to decide how long before he's going to look good again, because he's going to look bad in a rebuilding team.
Well, I agree with some of that. I think too much. Ted Marchibroda, another icon, once said, the quarterback gets too much praise when we win and too much blame when we lose. And I think that's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. So he's not as bad as you think he is, not you personally, but
no, I go back and forth. Some weeks I think he's terrific. Some weeks I think he's horrendous.
Which tells you that he's pretty good. He's pretty good. Is he Tom? No, absolutely not. Not even close. Is he Peyton? No, probably. And the key question to me, if this were a meeting at somebody's team headquarters talking about this personnel, the point that you made that caused the light to go off was, is he mobile enough for today's game? Because keep this in mind, two contexts. Mm-hmm. I'm going to quote Bill Parcells now. The only way you can learn to play on the offensive line is with pads on. What have we done with offensive linemen? We've taken the pads off, including in training camp, which I think is the biggest mistake that could have been made. I don't mind about the offseason, although I still want those rookies doing one-on-one. But you can put pads on them, just like the foam caps and figure that one out. We got to go in training camp. We got to go hard in training camp. However you do it, whether it's playing them in the preseason or not, in camp, in practice, you have to go hard with pads on. And I think you got to go hard with the offensive and defensive linemen at least twice a day. You got to give them a break. In camp. And that shows up. It's not only the Patriots. I live here in Charlotte. I mean, you want to hide your eyes when they go back to throw. This is and I look at film. This is league-wide. Protection has fallen down league-wide.
And the ironic thing, Bill, to interject, the league is doing these things in part, a lot of the rules, to protect the quarterbacks, and the lack of protection is putting the quarterbacks in greater peril because the linemen aren't ready for the season to start, and you get guys with 6'5", 298 running 4.3s coming off the edge.
Unintended consequences.
Yes.
So, especially true when you have people involved in the rules that really don't know football, from the ground up. So, but that's a discussion for another day. The issue here is that the protection for someone who is not terribly mobile is a problem. I don't see the rules changing anytime soon.
Right.
Because they're in the CBA. That's really hard to change. So is it fair to say that you ought to be thinking about mobility as a key factor with quarterbacks, and especially with a team that's grown? I don't have the answer to that, but I see a lot of mobile guys like Washington's guy, Sam Howell.
Yep.
Doing pretty well. And they have the very same offensive line problems that the Patriots do. So maybe the answer is get a mobile guy.
And the combo
that's a big discussion.
And the arm strength too. I mean, I look at Sam Howell, reminds me of Baker Mayfield, little stocky, blocky guy who can move around, throw on the run. Are you going to win a Super Bowl? Are they the first guys you're going to look to and say, boy, I got to build around them? Probably not. But you can trot out a product on Sunday that's not going to be challenged to get into the end zone more than once. And that's what the Patriots are right now. With 10 weeks to go, or excuse me, with 8 games to go and 2 months to go, how's the best way for the Patriots to proceed in attacking the rest of this season? I mean, Bill wants to win. He wants to chase Don Shula. He wants to get success. But do you also need to figure out what you have going forward? And will Bill be here to author it? That's why I wanted to have you in. This is so unprecedented for us, and it's so disorienting. And we're talking about the legends of the game and what might be the winter of their time together. How do you do it, Bill?
Well, first of all, you lay out a plan, and you stick with the plan regardless. Now, can the Pats win while at the same time finding out what the people on their squad can do? The answer is absolutely yes. I mean, Bill does that every single year. The first 4 games of the year is mix and match, and this guy here and that guy there, and game 5, all of a sudden, up we go. So, no one does it better than him. So he can do those 2 things at the same time. Now, the players have to perform, and you have to perform in situational football with critical efficiency. That's what's been missing. And part of that is Mac. But the part of that is a huge part of that is the protection as well. So every day, the hallmark of Bill Belichick's teams, and he's the bellwether here, is that, well-coached teams get better as the season goes along, and teams that are not well-coached don't. That's why the Patriots have always gotten better as the season has gone along. There's no reason to believe that while the level of excellence may not be what it once was because of the quality of player, there's no reason to believe that this team won't get better as the season goes along. Mm-hmm. Does that translate to win and loss? Bill Walsh once famously said, and I believe every word, that if you meet your standard of performance every week, the score takes care of itself. So I don't have any doubt that Bill's going to coach this team well, and that they're going to get better. The question is how much better, because of what the level of talent is. And then once the season's over, you step back, take a dispassionate look at things, and see where you are on the reset timeline. It's simple as that.
What's your relationship been with Bill over the years? It must have been like he's always talked about even the people he was closest with when he was competing against them, former assistants, and he just wouldn't really talk to them as much. But it must be far different now than it was, say, in 2007.
Yeah, it is. It is. We served together on the Hall of Fame Centennial Class Selection Committee. And there were myself, I believe, Ron Wolf, Bill, maybe Ozzie, who were given an assignment to go back and look at tape of as much as we could get of people who played in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. So Bill and I are both football nerds, so we loved it. The discussions on Zoom call, I don't think we had Zoom then, they were conference calls, were great. I learned a lot listening to him. And then when we had an in-person meeting, we had a very nice conversation. And during the back and forth in the meeting, it was amazing, how much we agreed on things.
Yeah.
And so, looking at players, and he would make a point, and, I'd say, yeah, well, that's really a great point, et cetera, et cetera. And then since then, we talk occasionally. I don't have occasion to run into him as much anymore as I used to. And it's very cordial. And I've said time and time again, there's nobody in my time in the league, including Coach Shula, who I revere, who did a better job of coaching on game day than Bill Belichick does. And So, and that's just a fact. So, as I said, when you take the competitor's hat off, you have a different view of things.
Yeah, it's like two boxers trying to knock each other's heads off for 15 rounds. The bell rings at the end, and it's just the embrace and the appreciation for bringing out the best in someone.
Yeah.
That I think infuses that. Bill,
it's hard to lose. It's hard to lose. It's hard to be second. And we worked for a lot of those years, but you have to take your hat off, as they say in baseball. You tip your hat and say great job, and to say anything else would be disingenuous.
I hoped when I reached out to you that this would be illuminating. It's been much more illuminating than I could have hoped, because there's only a few people who could provide the perspective. There's nobody really, I think, that could provide the perspective that you did on Bill, on the situation, on the NFL, on the Patriots. So we're indebted to you. Thank you very much for taking almost 40 minutes to help us understand what we're looking at.
Well, I think I would thank you for having me. I'd leave you with this message. Remember what you were looking at. Tony Bennett has a song called Once Upon a Time, Never Come Again. That could be the theme song of the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady Patriots.
Thank you, Bill.
Enjoy it.
Thank you, man. Take care.